Northern Ireland's First Minister Paul Givan has stepped down. It follows talks between UK Brexit lead Liz Truss and the European Commission's Maroš Šefčovič after a violation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. The DUP's leader's resignation comes amid continued trade talks. Agricultural Minister Edwin Poots ordered all Brexit checks on food and farm products entering the territory to end from midnight on Thursday. However, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says checks are continuing. This is a matter for the Northern Ireland Executive to resolve. Well, for more, we're now joined by our correspondent in Brussels, Shona Murray. So, Shona, what has come of these emergency talks then between the UK and the EU Commission over this unilateral move by Northern Ireland to end those custom checks?
Well, in the last half hour or so, Liz Truss, the UK's Foreign Secretary, and Maroš Šefčovič, the EU's Brexit negotiator, have had a meeting that was already pre-planned. We've just heard from Liz Truss saying that it was a good meeting. We don't know much of the details, but we know this has been a very difficult day for Brexit. I'm joined now by Ireland's Foreign Affairs Minister, Simon Coveney. Minister, first of all, just clear up the situation here. What is the impact of the Northern Ireland Agricultural Minister saying that checks won't happen anymore on the border between GB and NI?
Well, first of all, last night the Agricultural Minister in the devolved government in Northern Ireland, who's a hardline unionist, said that he has instructed his officials to no longer undertake checks, sanitary and phytosanitary checks, on goods coming into Northern Ireland from GB, which is, of course, a requirement under the Northern Ireland Protocol. As it happens, his officials have not taken that instruction, and they're continuing to maintain checks today, and they say that they're getting legal advice in terms of what legal obligations they have. But what's very clear here is that the protocol is part of the withdrawal agreement and part of an international treaty between the EU and the UK. It is part of international law. And so the British government have a responsibility to ensure that those checks take place, regardless of whether there is an individual minister playing politics with these issues. So, you know, it was an unfortunate announcement last night, and it's been followed by a DUP or a unionist First Minister in Northern Ireland resigning this afternoon to collapse devolved government in Northern Ireland, again in protest at the protocol. So I think this is a time for cool heads. It's a time to recognise that there are elections on the way in Northern Ireland and that people are trying to position themselves and their parties for those elections. And we need to keep our eye on the goal here, which is to achieve a compromise agreement between the EU and the UK on how we implement the Northern Ireland Protocol and the withdrawal agreement. Because if we can't implement the withdrawal agreement, well then of course that calls into question whether we can implement the trade and cooperation agreement between the EU and the UK, which would be of course a very serious development indeed that nobody wants.
So what could happen here is that the trade and cooperation agreement, the trade agreement negotiation between the EU and the UK could be suspended if the UK doesn't ensure those checks take place?
No, that's not what I'm saying, and I don't think we're there yet. But what we have said consistently is that if the British government refuse to abide by their legal obligations under international law and effectively don't operate the protocol as we all agreed, well, then that undermines the capacity for the TCA to operate. But I don't think we should be in the space of threats here. The focus at the moment between Maroš Šefčovič and Liz Truss is very much on finding compromise positions, landing zones and agreements in terms of how we implement the protocol in a way that both sides can agree to in the context of Northern Ireland. But unfortunately, as ever, this has had a really polarising impact on society and politics in Northern Ireland. And now we're in the build-up to an election in Northern Ireland at the latest in early May. And so we are seeing now some politicians, unfortunately, using the protocol to generate political momentum in the build-up to those elections, which is unfortunate and unhelpful.
What do you think the implications will be now of Paul Givan, Northern Ireland's First Secretary, resigning today?
Well, I mean, the way in which the political structures in Northern Ireland work is that if the First Minister resigns, then what's called the Deputy First Minister. So in Northern Ireland, you have a requirement for shared government between unionists and nationalists. And there's a unionist First Minister and there's a nationalist Deputy First Minister. If the First Minister resigns, then the Deputy First Minister is also forced to resign, and the executive or the devolved government in Northern Ireland collapses. Ministers stay in office in a caretaker role, but substantial policy decisions can't be made or discussed. And so effectively what's happened now is that because of the actions of one political party in Northern Ireland against the wishes of all of the others, Northern Ireland is now paralysed effectively in terms of its ability to be able to make political decisions because there is no functioning devolved government. And that looks like it's going to be the state of play in Northern Ireland until there is an election. And I think the tactic here is to try to make the election in Northern Ireland about the protocol, which is very divisive and very unhelpful, as many of us work hard to try to find compromise agreed positions to be able to ensure that the British government complies with not only with international law, but within international law that the British government wrote themselves with the EU in the context of the Brexit withdrawal agreement.
In terms of trust, I suppose, where does this leave the negotiations that were ongoing before Christmas between the EU and the UK? If today you had George Eustice, Minister in the UK in the House of Commons, saying and reiterating what's been said, that it's not up to the UK to ensure that these checks take place, not up to the UK government. That's something obviously you disagree with. And in the meantime, Liz Truss is having negotiations with Maros Sefcovic about how to make the protocol better. And then in Northern Ireland, you have a collapsed executive, perhaps, and at least one very potent party saying they're not going to implement the checks.
Well, I mean, what it means is ongoing uncertainty, instability, tension, polarisation, and bad politics in Northern Ireland. I think it's also important to say, regardless of what a British government minister may say today, the facts here are very clear. The British government has an obligation to comply with international law and treaties that it's signed up to. And that includes implementing checks that are linked to the protocol. Of course, we're trying to negotiate with them to reduce the number of checks that are required to make the protocol as implementable as possible in a way that everybody can live with. That's an ongoing negotiation. But the idea that the British government can simply set aside large elements of the protocol and then blame it on devolved government in Northern Ireland is not a credible position, and I don't believe it's a legally sound position either.